John Fitzgerald Kennedy, while visiting Frankfurt in 1963, said, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future." But I think that in order to create a better future, we need to understand and learn more about our past, simply to avoid making the same mistakes. Hi, my name is Damian Rubańczyk, and in this episode of Checkout Time, I'm going to guide you through some rough times of my beloved country, Poland. My grandpa would say that it's better to fight for something than live for nothing. And it is so visible in our country's history. Rarely have we invaded, we were rather invaded. What are your thoughts on it?
We are at Liwiec Castle, near the site of the 1863 Battle of Węgrów, which has been compared to the Polish Thermopylae. Interestingly, the Polish word broń, which means weapon in English, carries a deeper significance, as it is derived from the verb meaning to defend oneself. I believe this word reflects our history and the spirit of our people who have always had to defend themselves. The history of this place also showcases the strength of the Masovian Prince, who built this fortress on the border with Lithuania. As history proved, for the next 200 years, it had successfully defended itself against invaders.
Nowadays, we can start and end a war just using a button, but the evolution of weapons throughout the centuries was absolutely amazing.
When the castle was built in the 15th century, a single sword was worth as much as an entire village, making it an extremely valuable and coveted object. The journey through history in our museum allows visitors to observe the evolution of weaponry. From the magnificent 15th and 16th and 17th century sabers and swords, all the way to rifles and bayonets from World War II. This progression reflects the continuous advancements in human ingenuity.
Turmoil of war is an imminent part of Polish history, but how can we create a better future?
Here at Liwiec Castle, bricks from the castle tower were meant to be used for the construction of the Treblinka camp during World War II. One might ask how we can come to terms with the horrors that happened in places like Treblinka. The answer, I believe, lies in shedding light on what is good by showcasing the beauty of the world. And here in the Liwiec Valley, the beauty is easy to find. One only needs to look from the tower to see what I consider the most breathtaking view in Mazovia, the Liwiec River flowing through vast meadows, a sight that reminds us to appreciate the world's beauty.
I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but I'm sure that the World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. These words, attributed to Albert Einstein, suggest that the Third World War will be so devastating that all humanity's progress will be wiped out and we will come back to the technological level of the Stone Age. But in order to avoid this situation, let us learn more about the past and our history. So let's carry on with our episode. The Łochów Palace and Grange is situated just an hour drive from Warsaw, the capital of Poland, in the heart of Nadbużański Landscape Park on the Liwiec River. And it is a perfect example of how the past and the present day can coexist together, creating an estate which is filled with memories and plans for the future. Originally, the complex of Łochów Palace included the buildings of the palace kitchen, the coach house or the carriage house, and the outbuilding. In 2017, this property was enriched with a new part called the Folwark, and the name was changed into Łochów Palace and Grange. Nowadays, there are 457 rooms, which can accommodate over 1,000 people. When I entered the area of Łochów Palace and Grange, I said, wow, this looks very impressive, but everything began with this place, palace to be exact, but it didn't look like this from the beginning.
Dokładnie. Na początku był parterowym budynkiem.
Initially, it was a single-story building constructed at the request of Count Hornowski. Over time, it was transformed into a rather large palace, mainly because it was used as a family residence. Later, it was restored after suffering some damage during the war, and now it stands as a beautiful, grand building.
Pięknym, dużym budynkiem pałacu.
Is it true that the palace itself reflected the habits of people in the 19th century? For example, that there was a separate place for women and separate wing for men?
Upon entering, there was a shared area, and then the ladies would go to one side and the gentlemen to the other.
Everything started here, in this historical 19th century palace, originally commissioned by Count Hornowski, and later redesigned by a renowned architect Podczaszyński. This palace, before the Second World War, was owned by a few aristocratic families. For example, Hornowski, Zamoyski or Kurnatowski. After the Second World War, it got gradually destroyed. From the abyss of oblivion, it was pulled out by Władysław Grochowski. After Hornowski, there were three other families who owned this place, and one of the owners was very fond of horses, and it also influenced the look of this place.
Był to hrabia.
It was Count Kurnatowski, who was deeply passionate about horseback riding and had an extensive collection of horses here. He also participated in horse races in Warsaw, where he secured second place. This earned him a substantial sum, which was the equivalent of 1 million zloty in today's currency.
Count Kurnatowski, the last owner of the estate before the Second World War, was a great lover, expert and breeder of Arabian horses. He established a racing stable here in Łochów. In the estate, on the grounds of the carriage house, very well-known horse fairs were organized, where people would come from all around Europe to admire and buy these incredible animals. Visiting such hotels, I'm amazed by the way buildings change their purpose throughout decades or centuries. For example, this carriage house used to be filled with horse neighing, and right now it can be full of laughter of families coming here to relax. Because this building, with its 56 rooms, is one of the few the guest can choose from to enjoy their stay. What can the guests who come here expect?
Visitors have plenty of options since we have vast green areas which are perfect for walks. There is also the Island of Poets, the entire historic section where we are now, and a small church.
Coming to such a state, I could expect a pond, I could expect a restaurant, a swimming pool, but a church, well, you must admit that it's something unusual.
Guests are often surprised to find a church within the estate. It is still functioning and is used for weddings, baptisms, communions, and other family celebrations.
This wooden church is a proof that when you have 40 hectares and unlimited resources, then the sky is the limit. It was built in 1932 in Wólka Dobryńska, which is over 150 kilometers from here, where it served its parishioners for over 70 years. Later, it was transferred here board by board. And nowadays, this property has a church, which for some is a touristic attraction, but for the others, the place of faith. You mentioned the island of writers and poets, and the name of Norwid rings a bell in my head, but I cannot connect it with this place.
Norwid used to visit the palace during the time of its first owner, because the owner's wife had a sister who was his grandmother. He would spend summers and leisure time here with her.
This property invites you to explore its tranquil grounds. You can take a peaceful stroll through the park, immerse yourself in nature, or simply unwind. Historic ponds give you a chance to go boating or to visit the island of writers and poets, with stages of different Polish artists such as Sienkiewicz, Konopnicka, Baczyński, headed by Cyprian Kamil Norwid, who used to be a guest here. What is your favorite part of this property or estate?
I think this very room we're in is my favorite.
Why is that?
It's unique and truly stunning. It has a very old-fashioned charm and is often used for various photo shoots. I believe it's the most enchanting space here.
Traveling with checkout time, we visit fine hotels and interesting places rooted in history. But talking about history doesn't always mean telling beautiful tales. We arrived to a place where there are no interesting palaces or fascinating art, but there is harsh truth that needs to be told. Traveling by train, in my head, is associated with something joyful, like visiting my friends or going on a holiday. But here, train travel means something sinister and ominous. I'm going to start by saying that this may be the most emotional segment of checkout time that we have realized so far, but at the same time, it is a segment that needed to be realized because we arrived to Treblinka, and there it's so peaceful and quiet around, but at the same time, this quietness speaks volumes. What is Treblinka?
In this area, Nazi Germany established two camps. The first was a labor camp, which operated from the summer of 1941 to the summer of 1944. It is estimated that around 20,000 Poles, Jews and Roma passed through the camp, and approximately half of them were murdered. Midway through the operation of this camp, the Germans established a second camp, which was one of the most genocidal sites in world history, the extermination camp. In just over a year, Nazi Germany murdered between 800,000 and 900,000 Jews here, along with several thousand Roma.
Why do you think people come here?
Everyone has their own personal reason for coming to this place. I believe that one of the main ones is the desire to learn and understand history. Often, it is also about honoring the victims or reflecting on the past to better understand the future.
As far as I can see, there are stones here. What do they symbolize?
There are about 17,000 stones here, a symbolic number representing the victims the German camp authorities could exterminate in just one day.
When we plan sightseeing, we tend to use visually appealing places with heartwarming backstories. But I encourage you to dig deeper, because learning about your sometimes difficult past enables you to create a better future. It may not be easy, but it will be enlightening and definitely worth it. Do you think that people are afraid to be confronted with this past, like I was?
It depends on people's sensitivity. Some individuals, especially those who are more sensitive, may choose to avoid this place perhaps because they fear how it might affect them. And in reality, visitors do not return home the same as they were before. This place teaches us that fundamental human values such as equality, justice and freedom are not abstract concepts. Neglecting them can lead to tragic consequences, as seen in the extermination camp in Treblinka.
Tragicznych konsekwencji, takich jak tu obóz zagłady w Treblince.
Grzesiuk, Herling-Grudziński, Borowski, Naukowska. Their books introduced me to the world of Holocaust at a very young age. And yet, I never considered visiting an extermination camp because I thought I knew enough. And I was very wrong, because coming here in person made me realize that the history will keep repeating itself unless we all in unison say never again. Nigdy więcej. Having visited Treblinka, I'm overwhelmed with emotions because I confronted stories from books with reality, and I'm still craving for answers. And I think the best way to get them is to visit a home of a person who lived in the world before the Second World War, during and after. And she not only lived then, but she also described this reality. The beginning of the Second World War, the most destructive and the deadliest war in the history of mankind, was at the same time the frontier between two different worlds, both of them described by Zofia Naukowska in her novel. So how does she describe the reality?
For Naukowska, the two wars she lived through, one in Warsaw and one just outside the city, had completely different meanings. The First World War unfolded nearby. However, during the Second World War, she was in the midst of it all. She remained in Warsaw and became one of the city's residents who endured all the repressions directed at the capital. For Naukowska, this meant an entirely different way of living and functioning. At this point, I believe we should turn our attention to medallions. This work represents a unique literary genre in Zofia Naukowska's body of work. She made a conscious decision to describe the apocalypse of the 20th century in this particular way, a time when one world was ending and another was beginning, a world in which the era of noble manor houses was fading, making way for the reconstruction of not only the country, but also the moral restoration of societies as a whole, across all nations.
Words, people did it to other people, or in other words, people created this fate for other people, are the words which resonate in me and in so many Polish people, and they were taken from her novel.
What she wrote about, she experienced firsthand. Let's not forget that she lived in Warsaw during the Second World War, meaning she saw with her own eyes what was happening beyond the ghetto walls. She saw people dying of hunger. She saw people disappearing. The phrase people to people stayed with her throughout the war. As a sharp observer of everyday life, Naukowska often wrote that war does not introduce new phenomena. It simply unleashes the worst that already exists within us.
Did she give any advice in her letters or in her books on how to survive such disaster and how to live after that?
Naukowska subjected the world she lived in and the reality she survived to a thorough critique. She identified the culprit, pointed to the cause, and ultimately offered us a lesson for the future. Never forget that evil does not come from some external force. It emerges from within us, from the depths of our humanity, from the darkest corners of our emotions and minds. And it is only up to us whether history repeats itself.
As I presumed, it has been quite challenging to walk you through the meanders of Polish history. But history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived. But if faced with courage, not need to be lived again. See you next time.